welcome to the deep dive. Today, we're diving into something that's probably in your pantry right now.
Yeah.
Food dyes.
Oh, yeah.
You sent over some really fascinating research on how they're regulated. All around the world, the U.S., Canada, Europe. We're going to get into all that.
Yeah.
Plus some of the potential health concerns and even some really cool natural alternatives.
Yeah, it's one of those topics that most people don't think twice about, but it really gets to the heart of consumer choices and how what we eat impacts us. And I think the global differences in regulations are pretty striking.
It's like a worldwide game of what's allowed.
Right. Yeah.
So where do we even begin with this? It's a whole rainbow of regulation.
I think we got to start in our backyard, right? The United States.
Okay.
The FDA has a pretty permissive approach, I would say.
Yeah.
They allow a wide range of artificial dyes and preservatives in our food.
Right. And the research you sent over mentioned some of the big ones like red 40, yellow 5.
Oh, yeah. Very common.
These are things that we see all the time.
Yeah.
And they're supposed to make those products last longer, look more appealing on the shelves.
For sure. Yeah. I mean, those are big factors for the manufacturers.
Right.
They want that product to have a long shelf life and look appealing, but
But I have a feeling there's a trade-off here.
yeah, exactly. And I think that that focus on shelf life and appearance might come at the cost of potential long-term health risks.
Okay, so that's where our neighbors to the north come in, right?
Yeah.
Canada.
Yeah, absolutely. Health Canada.
They've got a different perspective up there.
They have a much stricter approach. They really do.
Yeah.
They monitor and regulate food additives much more rigorously than the FDA does.
Interesting.
And what I found fascinating is that there are several dyes that are given the green light here in the U.S. that are either under intense scrutiny in Canada or completely banned.
Okay, now that's a plot twist.
Right.
I did not see that coming. So.
What makes you wonder?
Yeah, give me an example. What's something that we might find down here that's totally, off the table up there?
Yeah, a great example is Allura Red, which is also known as Red 40.
Okay.
While it's commonly found in candies, cereals here in the U.S., it's banned in Canada.
Well,
due to concerns about potential links to hyperactivity in children.
it makes you really question those brightly colored snacks.
Yeah, it really does.
Like, what is going on? Why is there such a difference?
Well, I think part of it might be stronger consumer advocacy in Canada.
Yeah.
There's also the fact that different countries have different scientific approaches and risk assessments when it comes to food safety, so.
That makes sense.
Yeah.
So we've got the U.S. being a little bit more lenient. We've got Canada being a little more strict. What about across the pond in Europe?
Yeah.
What's going on over there? Because they always seem to be ahead of the game on this kind of stuff.
Yeah, they often are. The EU, in particular, has adopted the precautionary principle when it comes to food additives.
Okay, so break that down for me. What does that actually mean?
It essentially means that if there's any scientific evidence suggesting a potential risk to human health,
Okay.
even if it's not completely conclusive,
Yeah.
they err on the side of caution.
So rather than waiting for definitive proof, they're like, well, there might be something here. Let's just
take a step back.
take precautions.
Exactly. And this often translates to warning labels on products containing certain artificial dyes or even outright bans on some additives.
Yeah, I've definitely seen those warnings on some European food products before.
Yeah.
It definitely makes you stop and think.
Yeah, they're not messing around.
No, they are not.
It reflects a growing global movement.
Okay.
Pushing for safer and more transparent food practices, which is really where I think your deep dive is so important.
Yeah.
It starts to hit home, I think.
Yeah. So we got all these different regulations all around the world, different countries, different approaches. But I think the big question is, why should we even care? What does this actually mean for our health, these dyes and preservatives?
Yeah, that's the million-dollar question, right?
Yeah.
And, the research you provided links artificial food dyes and preservatives to a whole slew of concerns.
Yeah, and it really runs the gamut, too. We're talking like hyperactivity in kids, allergies. There's even some scarier long-term things in there. Cancer, obesity, heart problems. It gets a little overwhelming.
It can be a lot to unpack, for sure.
Yeah. How do we even begin to think about all that?
I think first and foremost, it's important to emphasize that these are potential risks. They're not guaranteed outcomes, and research is always evolving in this field.
Okay, so we're not doomed if we, eat a bowl of brightly colored cereal.
Exactly. But the potential implications are definitely worth paying attention to.
Okay, that makes me feel a little bit better. So let's break it down. What are some of the specific concerns?
Yeah.
The research mentioned red 40, yellow 5. I mean, these are names that we see all the time.
Right, they're everywhere.
Yeah, and to see them right there next to these potential health risks is, I don't know, a little unsettling.
Yeah, it can be eye-opening.
Yeah.
For sure. I mean, take red 40, for instance.
Okay.
It's been linked to hyperactivity and allergies in some children.
Yeah.
And there's even research exploring a potential link to ADHD.
Wow. Okay, so that's one to really keep an eye on. And yellow 5, that one wasn't given a free pass either, right? There was something about allergies and hives, maybe even asthma.
You're remembering correctly. Yep. All of those have been associated with yellow 5.
And then there's yellow 6, which has kind of a similar allergy, hyperactivity hyperactivity thing going on. But then it's got this added layer of, oh, it might also be a carcinogen.
Right. And that's where I think a lot of people start to get really concerned, because that word carcinogen is not something you really want to see.
No, it's not my favorite.
Especially with something that you're eating.
Yeah.
But the good news is your research doesn't just highlight the problems.
Okay.
It offers solutions, knowledge is power, and thankfully you've provided yourself with a healthy dose of it.
Okay, that's a relief. For a minute there, I thought I was going to have to live on like bread and water to avoid all of this stuff.
Right, like what can we even eat?
Yeah, so what can we actually do? What are some practical steps that we can take here?
Well, the research mentions growing your own food, which is a great goal, but realistically...
Not everybody's got a green thumb, right?
Exactly. Not everyone has the time or the space or the know-how to become a farmer.
Right. I can barely keep a houseplant alive, so...
But it does highlight how little control we have over what goes into our food, right?
Totally, yeah.
But even if you're not tilling a garden anytime soon, there's a whole world of natural dyes out there to explore.
Oh, yes, this is the fun part.
Yeah.
This is where we get to be creative.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And think about the amazing colors that you find in nature. Turmeric for a vibrant yellow, beet juice for these gorgeous reds and pinks.
Oh, yeah.
Even spirulina for these beautiful blue hues. And the best part is...
And they're good for you.
They come with all these added nutritional benefits.
It's a win-win.
Exactly. So you're getting vibrant colors and a nutritional boost.
Okay, so instead of that neon orange mac and cheese, I can have a vibrant pink mac and cheese using beet juice.
Exactly.
And it's actually good for me.
And it goes beyond just mac and cheese. You can find naturally colored pasta, cakes, smoothies.
I'm listening.
The possibilities are practically endless. It's all about tapping into that inner culinary creativity.
It really puts those overly processed, artificially colored foods to shame.
It really does.
And while we're on the subject of like healthier alternatives, what about those traditional food preservation techniques? I'm talking canning, fermenting, drying. Those always seem a bit intimidating to me, but I know they're out there.
Yeah, and they're making a comeback, which is great.
Yeah, why are they good alternatives?
Well, not only do they preserve food naturally without all those chemical preservatives,
Okay.
but they can actually enhance the flavor of your food. It's like taking a trip back in time to rediscover all those amazing flavors our grandparents enjoyed. More flavor, fewer chemicals. What's not to love?
All right, you convinced me. Mastering fermentation is going on my to-do list.
There you go.
So we've got natural dyes, traditional preservation. What else can we do on a daily basis?
You know, don't underestimate the power you have as a consumer.
Okay.
Opting for organic and non-GMO products is a great step.
Yeah.
These options often limit artificial additives.
Okay.
And they really align with those stricter standards we talked about.
Yeah, and it feels good to support those companies too.
It does.
Yeah.
And speaking of being a conscious consumer,
Yeah.
let's talk labels.
Boy.
I know. It sounds boring.
It does.
But it doesn't have to be a chore.
How can we make it less of a chore?
I like to think of it as like being a detective on a mission.
Okay, I like it.
You're on the hunt for clues, you're trying to decipher what's really in your food, and once you start paying attention,
I'm going to be surprised by what you find.
you'd be amazed by what you uncover.
Okay, so detective mode activated. What kind of things are we looking out for?
Pay close attention to that ingredient list. Look for those long, complicated chemical names that you don't recognize. Those are usually a good indication that artificial dyes or preservatives are lurking within.
Yeah, and those names change all the time.
They do. It can be tricky.
It's like, how am I supposed to keep up with this?
But just remember those common culprits we talked about. Red 40, yellow 5, yellow 6.
Oh, okay.
And don't forget, the same product can have different ingredients depending on where it's sold. Remember that whole global regulation puzzle we talked about?
Right, it's like those spot the difference games, but with food labels.
Exactly. What might be deemed safe in one country could be banned in another. It really does all circle back to being an informed consumer. You've done the work with this deep dive. You're armed with the knowledge. Now you can go confidently navigate those grocery store aisles.
So we've gone through a lot here.
We have.
Global regulations, potential health risks, and most importantly, how we can be, savvy about all this, take control of what's on our plates.
Become those informed consumers.
Right, but let's get real for a second.
Yeah.
We're talking about everyday foods here.
Totally.
Give me some examples, like where am I running into these sneaky dyes?
Think about like those brightly colored candies
Oh, yeah.
that practically scream for attention on the shelves, or like breakfast cereal,
With the marshmallows?
the dazzling loops and the colorful marshmallows. Oh yeah. Even some yogurt brands use artificial dyes.
Oh, to get those.
Look at those picture perfect hues.
Don't even get me started on that neon orange mac and cheese.
Oh, the classic.
That was my jam as a kid.
Oh yeah, of course.
Never realizing I was basically eating a science experiment.
Right. It's like, how do they get it, that color? It's fascinating how those artificial dyes can really make food so visually appealing.
It really is.
Even if it's not the most natural look.
Yeah.
And that's what hooks us, right?
Especially as kids, you're not thinking about it.
Especially as kids.
So it's eye-opening to think about all these things that I kind of took for granted And now knowing that, like the same product might look totally different.
Oh, yeah.
Depending on where you buy it in the world because of all those different regulations we talked about.
Right, and that's the detective work paying off.
Exactly.
What I think is so fascinating about all of this is it really highlights the power we have to make informed choices.
Yeah.
It's not about living in fear of food.
Right.
It's about understanding the potential impact of what we consume and feeling empowered to explore alternatives.
I love that. Knowledge is power.
There you go.
And sometimes it really is as simple as just like swapping out a few ingredients or, like you said, actually reading the label.
Absolutely. Small changes can make a big difference.
Okay.
And who knows, you might even discover a new favorite food or cooking technique along the way.
Exactly. It's a journey of discovery.
That's right.
And what a journey it's been today. We've gone from global regulations to like what's in your pantry right now.
That's right. Front to back.
All through the lens of these food dyes.
Such a fascinating topic.
It really is. If you had to pick one thing from this whole deep dive to change about your eating habits, what would it be? Would you experiment with those vibrant natural dyes, trade in that neon mac and cheese for something a little more, naturally colorful, delicious? Keep those questions bubbling until next time. Happy and informed eating.
If this video has been of value to you, please like, share, subscribe, and hit the notification button.